Hi, it's Chloe from the Riverscapes Assessment and Monitoring Laboratory, and in this video, I'm going to be going over rule-based symbology in QGIS, just some of the basics so that you can hopefully create rule-based symbology yourself. The easiest way to introduce rule-based symbology, it uses expressions to set classes, and if we open up this example that we did in the last video, I can actually switch this to rule-based and it will turn my existing symbology actually into rules. So let's see what that does. So each of these lines here is a rule, and the label is what will appear in the legend, and then the rule here is the expression that is gonna filter through things and decide how things are symbolized. So double clicking anywhere, I can double click on the symbol, on the label, or on the rule, and it all pulls up this same edit rule pop-up. This top section of the pop-up has to do with, here you can see the label, and then the filter, this is the expression or the rule. And then the bottom part of this pop-up is exactly what is in the symbol selector pane. So here's what it looks like with our rule-based example. I'm going to hit OK to save that. But if I opened up the symbol selector pane here, it looks exactly how it did in our rule-based edit rule pop-up pane. It's just the bottom half of that pane. So let's investigate the rules that QGIS created for us from our categorical symbology. If I hit this epsilon symbol, that will pull up the expression builder, and this is helpful for if you need, instead of typing a rule from scratch, which you can do in here, you can edit this box. This center section has options for you to add into your expression. And then this right side here gives additional information to help you understand what's in these drop downs and then what each of these things mean. So the most relevant categories in this center section will be your fields and values. That will look in your attribute table and pull up all the possible fields. And so the one we're using right now is dam setting. And if I double click anything in this center section, it will add it to the left section where you're actually building your expression. And you'll notice that any fields that are added in are enclosed in double quotes. That's an important note for getting syntax correct. I'm just going to remove this. And then if I was curious about what all the possible values for dam setting were, I could hit this all unique button and it will pull up all of the options. And if I wanted to add one in, here, I'll remove this classic here and use this to add it in. So a double click will add it in, and you'll notice that attribute values, if their text are enclosed in these single quotes or an apostrophe. So I'm going to click OK. I didn't really make any changes. Here, this final rule, in the previous video, we talked about it being a catch-all rule. So that uses, instead of a filter, it uses this else catch-all for other features. So that's how that rule was made. Let's look at a graduated symbology example now. So again, I'm just going to switch this to rule-based symbology. And this looks a little different. So this is using, I guess I'll show you in this expression builder. This uses stuff from this operators category. So you have some logical operators as well as math operators. So it's looking at this field, existing dam capacity, and selecting for when dam capacity is greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 0. Since QGIS built this rule off of already existing graduated symbology, this is actually a little redundant. I could switch it to just say equals 0 and remove that part of the expression. But you'll notice that when your attribute values are numbers, there are no special syntax, or there's no special syntax that you need to use. So you don't have to enclose it in double quotes or single quotes. The numbers just exist. They're a standalone. I'm gonna cancel this. And let's look at some layers that actually do use rule-based symbology as the only way to achieve that type of symbology. So this first one, water body type, is similar to categorical symbology. However, there are multiple F codes that correspond to each of these categories. So if we were using categorical symbology, we would have to make an entry for each of these F codes. But using rule-based symbology allows us to list the F codes and have them correspond to just one class instead of having this perennial class 4 times so that each of these 4 F codes are captured. Something else to note here, so these F code values, they are numbers, but you can see that they're enclosed in single quotes, which is because this water body type field is actually a text field. And if you were ever unsure about what your field is considered, in this same layer properties pane, you can switch to the fields tab, and this type column will give you what type of value it is. So if we look at water body type, it is a text or string. So that is the reason why these are enclosed in single quotes. If there were no single quotes around this, then QGIS wouldn't be able to symbolize it using these rules because it would be looking for text instead of, or it would be looking for a number instead of text, which is what it is. You can see these first 4 rules use this in operator, which looks inside a list, and if it is anything is equivalent to something within that list, it will evaluate to true and use this symbology. Down here, these 3 water body types only have one possible F code, so instead of using this in and a list, it just uses the equals operator. And we can look a little bit more at these different operators in here. So in, if I click that, I'm curious how it's used. Turns true if value is found within a list of values, and it gives you a couple of examples. So this is a really helpful pane to figure out how am I going to achieve this rule. There's also extensive documentation through QGIS that can be helpful for building rules. And another thing to keep in mind is that the language that is used to build these expressions is very similar to SQL. So if you're familiar with writing queries using SQL, then this will feel very familiar. Another useful dropdown in this expression builder pop-up is this conditionals. So this is where you'll find if and case. So those are also used for making expressions for symbology. I haven't really used anything in these other dropdowns, so I won't describe them. But again, if you're curious, you can always click down, click on something, and it will give you a definition and kind of an explanation. So let's look at, this is more like categorical symbology. This riparian condition layer is more similar to graduated symbology, where you can see we're looking at a range of numbers. However, this final class is not a range of numbers. So let's look at these rules. So for this final class, valley too narrow to sample, you can see that condition is just set equal to -1. And this is just what has been chosen as this basically no data value is -1. So since the symbology wants classes to be able to look in a range of values as well as look at equality to just one single value, rule base is used to accomplish both of those things at the same time within the same layer. So these 2 example layers are symbologies that are a little bit more complicated than just categorical or just graduated. And that is when rule-based symbology really shines, is to accomplish something that's a little bit more complicated. One other useful thing to know back in the expression builder, if the syntax was incorrect, so I'm just going to remove this parenthesis. This preview down here will tell you that the expression is invalid. So when you're making your rules, if you're in this pane, you'll know if you've made, yeah, an expression that won't actually evaluate to anything. And then the other place, or the other helpful tip, is using this test button. So it tells you how many features actually fall into the class that your rule is evaluating to. So let's look in the attribute table here. And we're looking at water body type. So there's 3 that are equal to this 3910 value, which we were just testing that rule. Let's see what else there is. There's a bunch of these 39004s and just a couple 39001s, or I guess more than a couple. Let's see, 39001 goes from 315 to 416, so there's about 101 of them. So let's test this rule and see if it pulls that up. Oh, actually, it also includes this 39004. So that starts at 4 and goes until 416. So we should see 112 values pop up for this rule. So let's test it. 413. Oh, I'm just bad at math. Yeah, that's correct. So my trouble with math on the fly aside, that should be everything that you need to know to get started with rule-based symbology. So yeah, I hope that this video was helpful.